Our gospel this morning comes from the book of John. After these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, though a secret one because of his fear of the Jews, asked Pilate to let him take away the body of Jesus. Pilate gave him permission, so he came and removed the body. Nicodemus, who had at first come to Jesus by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes weighing about 100 pounds. They took the body of Jesus and wrapped it with the spices and linen cloth, according to the burial custom of the Jews. Now there was a garden in the place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. And so, because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. Let us pray. Holy God, on this holy Saturday, where we sit in the in-between time, may our words, our mouths, and our hearts, as they reflect upon this meeting, are for your glory and for our transformation through your Son. Amen. So I've been reflecting a lot this morning on what Holy Saturday means to me. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, actually, of, initially we were going to do like a Zoom live, a Zoom meeting zoomed into Facebook Live. And, I found myself, as I was sitting with the technology for a solid hour, getting more and more frustrated and I cursed a little more like a sailor than I typically do. And it struck me once we finally came to the place of deciding, okay, this isn't working, what's next? It struck me that the anxiety and the stress I was wrestling with in that moment, I think, is the anxiety and the stress that we all wrestle with when something that we love, something that we cherish, has changed. When we lose something and the world shifts on us and we don't quite know what to do with it. And oftentimes, those moments when we catch ourselves in them, it invites us to sit in stillness, to rest in peace, as God does on the Sabbath day. And reading through this passage and thinking about when I've had moments when I have lost loved ones, and it has been the time between when they have died and before we have the funeral, and even after the funeral, there's this waiting that happens. When we lose someone we've loved, I remember this with my grandmother, the day after, the morning after I found out she had died, I just gathered at the table. My whole family did. We just sat at the table, and we didn't have much to say. We shared food. We shared a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and we sat in love for one another. And we mourned, and we grieved. And even in that space of mourning and grieving, there's still that stillness, that peacefulness that came with knowing that a new day had come. Even if it felt like our entire life ended with that person, the morning came again. There wasn't a theologizing. There wasn't a trying to fix things. It was sitting in this space. And I don't think we often do that when we think about Jesus. when we think about our relationship with God, we pass over this moment so quick to get past the crucifixion into the celebration of Easter. We don't stop to sit in our grief and honor the stillness that comes in our lives of just gathering at a table and loving one another and loving what God has given, even if we don't quite understand what it all means and what will happen next. So I invite you this Holy Saturday, when we don't have to run to the church to decorate it with the Easter lilies, when we don't have to gather to do 5 different walkthroughs of the different services and practicing the instruments to make sure that the music is just right, I invite us this Holy Saturday to observe it, to not worry about making things perfect and pretty, but just gathering around at that spiritual table together and sitting in love. Love for who Jesus is to us. To love one another in our grief. And to fully experience what it means to have our lives fundamentally changed by death. Because it's only by feeling this and embracing it that we can truly live into the joy of the resurrection on Easter. Amen.